crash fixes, bug fixes, content regression issues between 1B and 2. That's where all the work is going. That's our main focus. That's the only thing we're considering blocking issues right now is if we have ongoing crash problems or if content is broken on 2B that works fine on 1B. We want to sort that out. So you're not going to see a great deal of like user interface changes or things like that until 2B goes to live. But there's a lot of work going on, as you said, under the hood, and it's all related to that. Like I said, stability, bug fixes, and content regression issues. Something you may notice, which I believe Spiral has already brought up before, is that we made some changes to the way avatars load. So you may notice that when you're loading into a scene on 2B45 and of course later viewers, that everyone may appear blue for a while. Um, the blue, somebody being blue with a bunch of lines on them, that is our loading shader. That's what people look like when they're not finished loading. And it may seem like they're it's taking them longer to load now than it used to. That's not actually the case, but you may see them be blue for longer. The reason for that is um, we are holding back the skin loading now until all of the body morphs have been completed. And the reason we're doing that is because um, we had been loading them kind of just as, okay, this is finished, load it, this is finished, load it. But what that resulted in is a lot of times an outfit would load and the skin would finish loading and pop out, and the body morph may finish loading and load, but like the clothes may not be finished morphing to the body shape yet. And so what would happen is like bits and pieces of your avatar would poke through your clothes until yeah, the accidental nudity. It kind of looks like the clothes were tearing because like parts of your body were like jutting through the clothing because the body was done loading, but the clothes hadn't finished loading. So now we're holding back until everything's done loading, and then boom, we put it out there, and that should solve any issue with um, weirdness during avatar loading, the tearing, things being loaded out of sync and not fitting correctly and stuff like that. So this is not actually happening any slower than it was before. It's just we changed the order of the way things load so that they load in a more logical order. But that means that like the skin is gonna and stuff is gonna load a little bit later than it did before. But I think um, the overall experience should be much better because we did have a lot of complaints about people would load in and like you said accidental nudity, like the shape loads and suddenly there's boobs poking through your shirt which there shouldn't be there, and because they hadn't finished culling out yet and the clothing hadn't finished. That should hopefully be sorted now, but it may look a little strange when you first log in and there's plenty of blue people for a while until they all finish loading. Yeah, par for the course on some virtual worlds. Yeah, yeah, it is a little bit of a trade off because it's like okay, everything looks a little bit unloaded fast for longer, but in the end result, everything actually does fully load at the same time as it did before. So, but yeah, it's a compromise that has to be made. A lot of people are, it's we have it's not an adult grid, so we can't be putting ourselves in a position where we're in um, inadvertently having adult content just because of the way of our avatars load. Enjoy the topless experience at the Welcome Center last week. Yeah, 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 Cindy, I'm right there with you. From the days when in Second Life when you teleport and your hair and shoes back up your butt crack. Yeah, that was a fun experience. We were actually just reminiscing about that a couple days ago because we were all hanging out at Fantasy Fair. Um, but we have some other stuff going on here. There's we had some ongoing lingering issues in going back to unsexy work that's being done under the hood that you can't really see, but that will have an experience improvement. One of those things is there's been a long-standing problem with things being synchronized between viewers, not correctly changing when like the if you're sitting in a seat and you crash or your internet goes down or something like that, everybody else doesn't really that seat kind of gets lost. And that has to do with the fact of that person that was sitting in the seat was the person controlling that seat, and viewer crashes, viewer no longer has the capability tell to send out a message saying, "Hey, I'm no longer in the seat because it crashed. It's not running anymore." So we changed around a lot of stuff on the region server so that uh, the region server takes some responsibility for when somebody crashes or logs out inadvertently or otherwise loses connection. There's some that can happen after them, even if they're no longer there. The person responsible for a particular piece of data is gone, then we do that on our own. Bree Sana has um, a question. Yeah, actually, I was just looking at that for this event. I know what the issue is. The events tab. If you click that little enter button to go to an event, it currently only works if the region you're going to is a featured region on the featured tab. If it's just any old region, even if it's a legitimate region that exists and is open to, and, has a public access to it, it doesn't work if it's not on the featured tab. Those events only tab. So we're gonna change that. Yeah, well, the featured tab um, really shouldn't be tied to the events tab, because I mean we want people to be able to put events and stuff in there that without having to feature. Although one solution there might be too, just for all the regions, but that may get unwieldy as more events come up. Then the feature tab is going to be less and less. We want to, um, yeah, we're gonna change that around so that you can have an event that goes to an unfeatured. But yeah, that's I know that's been a complaint for the last few weeks. And we thought we had it solved because it turned out the people responsible for putting in the calendar events was putting the wrong region names in, and that was one problem. And so we got that solved. We're like, oh, that was that. It seems to be working now. I can go to the welcome center. I can go to Club 381. Stuff like that. And then it turns out like some still weren't working. And then this morning I was looking at it, and it's because those regions aren't featured. Some are, some aren't. Yeah, yeah, there's no point in having that enter button there if it doesn't work, right? So uh we will we'll get that sorted out so that in the 2B series viewers, hopefully in the next one that comes out. I didn't make it in 2B45 because that was made last night, but hopefully in 246 that comes out, then we'll have that solved. Alicia Skytower asks, is it possible to bind items to the individual count? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. What items are you talking about binding? Like making them non-transferable? Is that what you're after? So that they can't like give it away or auction it? Is that am I interpreting that correctly? I'll wait for your answer on that one. Will there ever be options to dismantle questing info stuck on our screen? We have people asking how to clear them. There should be a change. Not sure if it affects the 1B viewer or if it's only in the 2 viewer, but we did make it so that if a quest has been inactive for a long period of time, that it automatically disappears off the list. Manually clearing stuff, I don't know if I don't think that's currently an option, but it's something we could look at if you like just don't want it on there anymore. You could just delete it. I know some quests you can reset them if you're in the middle of them, but I don't know about once they're completed. I think they're just stuck there until they age off. But yeah, perhaps a manual uh, a manual clearing is not a bad idea. We've had some quests in the past to have better quest management as more and more of them happen, um, it's going to start to get really, really cluttered, and that's something we are going to have to deal with. I visited someone's space which has 20 fat owl quests clogging me up. Um, yeah, I noticed there's a carnival fishing game around, and it's a really cool game. But I noticed that it adds like a quest for every prize that you can get, which um, it gets to be quite a lot. So yeah, we definitely need a better way to manage or hide those. Um, Alicia, I'm still not quite sure what you're trying to say. Binding items to an account like the system used in MMOs. In my MMOs, I think that's the same basic idea. Like you get an item and it's like it's in your inventory and you can't give it away or do anything with it. Is that not what you're? I mean, if you can give me specifics on what you're hoping it will do, but in my mind, that's just making it where you can't change the account. You can't give it to another account. You can't sell it to another account. If you're after something different, you're going to have to give me more specifics on that. Yeah, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Preventing it from being transferred or sold. Um, I believe that that is somewhere on our roadmap. I think it's been talked about quite a few times over the years. I do. That's not currently a super high priority, but it probably wouldn't be um, a terribly difficult thing to implement as well. So yeah, it's something I can bring up and discuss with the group if it's something we want to bust out real quick. There may be implications to doing that. Like that aren't immediately obvious. Um, but yeah, we'll have to look at the technical side of it because the items get used in quests and other different ways. So we'll have to think about what it means to make an object non-transferable and what exactly the limitations are on that. But I will bring it up at in our with the other devs, and we'll see if we can get an answer on that. Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm more than happy to discuss the account bound issue. I know right now everything's kind of laissez-faire, and if you've got an item, you can more or less do what you want to with it. Um, so yeah, maybe more discrete item permissions is something that we should be putting some development time into because it will become an increase. See, I'm scrolling back up because somebody said I missed a question from Karsten. Um, with the new loading system, you normally load in fine, but every once in a while, the blue shader seems to hang on for several minutes, which is odd. Um, yeah, I've had that happen to me too as well, where I log in and it's like literally like 2 minutes before my skin appears or whatever. Um, and that's actually not an issue with the content delivery system. The content is there on your computer. What's going on there is it's probably getting hung up on the calculations because because all that content gets sent to your computer. You know the download speed is not the issue. Especially once you've done it once, you've got that cached, and you've cached your shirt and your pants and your shoes and your skin and all that kind of stuff. Those get cached individually on your computer once they're downloaded. But then when your avatar goes to load, uh, then it has to put all of those pieces together, and that's actually super computationally expensive. We're working on some ways to optimize that to cache not just the items themselves, the meshes and the textures and stuff like that, but we're seeing if it's feasible to cache the actual computations that come out of those. They can be quite large because um, you got your body and you put a shirt on. Then we have to calculate how every vertex on that shirt gets morphed by changes to body slider. Like you can change one slider and it remorphs the whole shirt, and so all those calculations has to be done. That has to be done for every single item that you're wearing. And then it has to go through and it has to calculate. Once it's done morphing, it has to say, okay, what areas of the body is this shirt covering? I have to calculate which vertices need to be deleted from underneath that shirt because they're no longer visible. Um, it has to calculate things like if you're wearing a shirt and pants, does the pants need to be tucked under the shirt? That's a separate calculation that has to be done. So the content is really not the issue. It's yeah, the content's there, but your system is churning over a bunch of calculations. And when you are doing an initial load and everything else is loading, your computer is busy doing so much stuff that it can't devote its full attention to calculations. So those calculations happen slower versus like when somebody else pops into a region that you've already loaded, your machine's not doing much right now because it's already loaded everything else. So that new person can calculate fast and get out of the way. So yeah, we are looking at ways to make those calculations faster or at least cache so you don't have to do them quite as often. Um, Will the issue of us having to constantly reset our dances so we can see each other be fixed soon? I hope so. I know this is a question that comes up a lot, and it's something that is on our list and we keep meaning to get to, and then it keeps getting preempted by higher priority fixes. But that is what we're on right now. Is like we're just doing bug fixes, and sometimes those bug fixes can be substantial. Like I was mentioning at the beginning of the show, we had we had a number of bugs related to the way voice over IP work, especially voice over IP in areas that have multiple voice over IP subzones. There were just a bunch of kind of semi-related bugs going on there. Um, and it was all down to just old architecture, systems being used for things they weren't originally intended to be used for. And the fix for that was okay. We've got to overhaul this voice over IP architecture so if it fits our current requirements, its future requirements, hopefully. Um, and so it's like okay, it's a bug, but it ended up taking me like I spent like 3 days just doing that, just overhauling that whole voice over IP thing. And so what seemed like a simple bug, um, it turned into well, the fix for that bug takes 3 days just to do that, and that became a higher priority than some other bugs like uh, the dance bug. But we absolutely want to fix the dance bug before Tubi goes live. Now that I've got the voice thing out of the way and I've got some other stuff out of the way, um, I'm hoping to get to that and vehicles for the rest of the week. There's still some lingering bugs with vehicles and vehicle resers, and I want to fix those, and I want to fix the dancing thing. So yeah, I can't make any promises that it's going to happen this week, but that's my current plan is to fix those this week. But if something higher priority comes up, that may get pushed off again. That's unfortunately just the nature of development. Everything comes in has to be prioritized, and sometimes a bigger issue comes in that has to take precedence. Um, Karsten, that's not actually the way. That's not actually true. Um, It's yeah, actually, that's I realize the component says that, but that's actually a holdover. You can actually there are some caveats to the way those zones work, but part of those caveats are going away in the rework that I just did. So actually, no, you can just make voice zones. You don't special um, from us. Uh, just Lava Voice Zone down. Actually, the next editor pack that's coming out once we update the processing servers. Due to this new update, there's going to be a whole bunch of new options that are coming with those voice zones that they couldn't do before. Things like voice zone priority. You'll be able to make like quiet zones where where like there's voice in the whole region except in this spot where you don't want voice, a kind of an inverse voice zone. There's a bunch of stuff that's getting added in there. And the new system makes it really easy to add new sorts of features like that in the future. Yeah, that's coming as well. That's something we were actually just talking about this morning was whether it made sense to um, to have that as an integral part of the viewer, or to let individual creators handle how they show where their voice zones are. I would like to have some place where you can at least check, like maybe in the room info dialogue or something, where at least show you looking for it, what voice zone you're in. Something more overt we may leave up to designer to display in some fashion. But yeah, that information does need to be out there. If for nothing else, then it's super diagnostic purposes. But also, it's just the more information we put out there, the better. Anyway, yeah, you can make a cone of silence now if you want to. If you go over here, this is the no talking zone. Let's see. I this question been thrown out there a couple times. So let me get to it. Sidearm asking about the Sciencebase URL access. Um, you're saying it works fine in the museum, sound, text, interactive exhibit, scripting, etc. Except when you try to teleport to demo other region Sciencebase, the web viewer crashes with an out of space message. Um, yeah, the WebGL viewer lags behind the other viewers in development. It's its own separate build thing. I would like to get it into the regular rotation with all of the other viewers. Um, which brings me back again to the my point at the top of the show was there's a lot of work that's uninteresting going on in the background, but it has to be done. And one of those things is Adam has spent the week retooling our build servers so that we can much more quickly and easily generate our viewer builds across all platforms. Because as we add platform support, it's getting increasingly difficult to handle that process on a manual basis. So our whole build architecture is getting a big upgrade this week. Um, and I would like to get the WebGL viewer added to that as well, because I would like to see regular updates to the WebGL viewer if possible. But the WebGL viewer is kind of a special beast, just because WebGL has so many limitations that a lot of stuff has to be stripped out of the WebGL viewer or replaced with web-specific stuff that doesn't work on the other platforms. So there's a lot of like, okay, like the voice over IP stuff, different system on the web than it is in the just because the nature of it running through a web browser. So there's a lot of setup work involved with that. But that's one of the reasons we're trying to right now. Adam has spent the week trying to automate as much of this stuff as possible, so that we can just push out viewers rapidly as changes are made. It'll increase. It'll decrease the amount of time that we're spending doing the actual build, which is kind of a time waste, and it'll increase our ability to test and iterate on viewer change and keep all of the viewers across all the platforms. Yeah, well, the web thing. Yeah, I understand. I think that was originally conceived of as a way to test out a specific region. It's like you can go into this region. I don't think it was ever necessarily intended to be a way to fully experience Sciencebase and jump around in it. Um, but if we can easily solve that, we should. And if there's a reason why that's not solvable, then we should disable it on the WebGL viewer so people don't try it. And if the solution is no, sorry, you have to close this tab and then reopen it. Click on the new place you want to go, and it loads a new tab with that new region. Obviously not ideal, but yeah, and you actually can do that. It's a separate URL. The URL is slightly different for going to the web viewer versus going to the downloaded viewer. Actually, both are in there, but I think there's an issue with the download option of URL right now, where it always opens a new viewer instead of accessing the one. Um, so that's yeah, that's I think that would be the web one specifically, which is kind of, but let me put that on my list, and we'll see if it makes sense to change which URL is given there. URL in probably shouldn't be the web URL. That whole region info tab is being is it, one of the things that's like right now we're focused on bugs and stuff, but we have people who are not developers, who are actually working on like reconcepting the UI for the region window and the groups window and stuff like that. And so that way, when we get done with the bug fixing and we get 2B out, we can move immediately on to, okay, we have a guide and a concept and a roadmap and plan for redoing those features, and we just immediately start redoing those features. And the region window tab is one of those things done. It'll probably get redone along with the group um, window because those are actually very closely tied together. Let's see. Let's see. I'm going. I'm going to the list here. If again, if I missed your question, feel free to ask it again. Um, Mimi asks, where on the to-do list is the transaction options for in-world transactions? It's on the list, but it's not a high priority right now. Uh, we're doing some other web-related upgrades. One that's coming out. Um, Either it actually might actually be out now, but it's not. It's going to be coming out very soon. Is giving grid owners control over like the users on their grid, being able to control add remove accounts, change passwords, that sort of stuff for accounts on other grids. So there's a bunch of management stuff being added to the curator above and beyond what's there. Some of it may not be immediately obvious, but there's again a lot of necessary but unsexy work going on there and stuff that just has to be done. We have to have a proper administrative interface with options for fully controlling that experience. And there's just and it actually will also um, not just benefit the people who have their own grid, but also benefit the Sciencebase main grid directly. In that it'll make us a lot easier for us to help diagnose customer account issues. Resolving those customer account issues. We'll be able to give more people, more of our staff members, the ability to resolve those issues rather than just people who are higher up and have deeper access to the grid system. So we'll be able to delegate that out, which hopefully help improve our overall customer experience. Rizana asks, I know this isn't a major question, but is there any way the review team can send a little note saying your project didn't make a review and why, instead of not saying anything, don't know what's going on, and you end up having to contact staff to contact them? Um, you're supposed to get that already. There is when if the review staff rejects your item for some reason, there's a place where they can put in a note saying exactly why they rejected it, and that shows up in Curator. If you're getting items rejected that don't say why they're being rejected, that's not a technical problem. That's a staff problem, and we'll need to talk to the review. They should always be putting in the reason they rejected it, and if that's not happening, then I would talk with them and say, you always have to put in mind. But that's always been in there. There's always been a place to say, oh, it was rejected for this. Please do this to solve it and resubmit. I mean, that's just a that we have to have and we've had for years. Um, yeah, I believe it's supposed to send an email out also saying it's been rejected, and you can log into Curator and see why on your items list. If that's not happening, then we'll look at why those emails might not be going out. But you should get an email for it the same as you get for uploading and accepting and items being accepted. When it's accepted, it says, "Hey, your item is now live." You're supposed to get a notification on as well. So let me look into that. That's supposed to be happening. If it's currently not, then yeah, sometimes it may be going to spam. But if you're not getting it at all and you've checked everything else, then I'll look into it. And we'll see if we can find out if some of those emails are failing to go out for some reason. Let's see, notification affected items. Just making a note here so that I always make notes and then I can dump them to the team afterward after the office hours here. Okay, so yeah, I'll look into that. Um, Yeah, my low poly avatar. This is my there's a ton of these low poly avatars on the main grid. This is Cinti content. They make a lot of really great low poly content. Uh, where are you? Oh yeah. But yeah, this is when we hold company meetings in break room or whatever, then I feel like switching to a theme appropriate avatar, and I picked this one off the off the store and just went with it. Yeah, if you're getting emails going to your spam box, which I happens to me, sometimes for no apparent reason. I think it depends on like if I use Gmail, and it depends on the name of the item can often determine whether it goes to spam or not, because Google's spam algorithm may pick up on a particular word or something in the name of the object and decide that it's spam and send it over there. I would recommend you can go into um, mail and whitelist emails coming from ScienceBase. You just create a new filter and say, if it's coming from ScienceBase, um, don't ever spam it. Like mine, I apply a ScienceBase label to it. Don't make it a spam. Always put it in a predictable location. That way, it's all easy to find. It shows up under a tag on the left. I don't have to worry about it going to spam, that sort of thing. So, yeah, if you're having trouble with that, I would highly recommend making a filter or a whitelist on whatever mail program you use, so that it skips over spam checking for those. Uh, so let me see if I've got what else I've got here. Um, yeah, just throwing it out there. We do still want to hear about if you notice any content regressions between 2B and 1B viewers, where something looks different on 1B versus 2B. Just as a reminder, if you do see something, please let us know, because that's what we want to fix right now. Um, and as mentioned with the build server overhaul that we're doing, um, there part of that is automating our process of building the Mac viewer, so we should get much more reliable and synchronized Mac viewer updates out along with the other updates. What else do I have? Oh, we found an issue where avatars were sometimes not showing up for everybody. Like somebody might log in and most people would see them, but maybe somebody wouldn't, or a couple people wouldn't. And so we found an issue there. That's been solved on, again, that's a region server update. So that's one of those like really basic things where it's like you got to be able to see the people there, or what's the point of a virtual world? So we were really happy we were able to track down that bug, and that should no longer be an issue. Um, Cindy is asking about the Agora plugin. If anybody's seen it, the break room stuff that we've been doing, there's like screen and webcam sharing. That's Agora. That's what Cindy's talking about here. Is we have an Agora integration. Um, it actually is possible for anybody to use that, but as I discussed like last week, I think it's a policy thing, not a technical issue. In that we have to figuring out how the billing works for that. Cindy, I know you have your own grid, so for people who have their own grid, that billing would just be part of the grid package, or rolled into the grid, the payments for those grids or whatever. So we can have a discussion on that. Um, if For people who want to use it on the main grid, it's a different story. We haven't decided yet how we want to allow that, because anybody who's using Agora for that purpose uh, does cost us money, because it's a per minute charge for people to use that service, because it's relying on Agora's servers, not ours. Um, yeah, you can get your own Agora key instead of using ours. That is something we want to enable. We've had a couple of requests from grid owners who are like, yeah, just let me sign up for Agora, and I'll use my own key, and then worry about your own billing. But we do want to um, offer a one-point solution for that as well, where everything goes through our key, and then instead of having to worry about, oh, you have to go sign up, you have to handle building at these multiple locations. Where if you're using it in Sciencebase, you can just use it in Sciencebase, and we handle the middle part of that of being signed up with Agora and and the billing and stuff that goes along with that that gets rolled into your Sciencebase bill instead of you having to do everything yourself. But there are cases where it does make sense for you to say, no, I want to use my own. I'll do that. We're probably going to enable that at a grid level. So um, as our first implementation of that. So if you have a private grid, which I know you put in, this is your Agora key, and that's what it uses. That's something we can fast track. It'd be very easy for us to do actually. If you want to send me a message about it on Discord, I will bring it up with that'll be Alan's team care of that. It'd be very simple to add in. Um, yeah, I think I'm missing um, a little conversation going here, but looks like yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can get off the asset store that I think you go to the asset store and um, you want animations or textures or sounds or mesh assets, 3D models, things like that, particle systems, all that kind of stuff is going to work natively in Sciencebase. Um, if you're downloading an asset that has custom scripts associated with it, those custom scripts take two forms. There are some assets which are tools that work in the editor, and they're designed to help you build stuff. Like cutting out meshes, positioning things on grids, snapping things together, generating terrains. All that kind of fun stuff. Those tools work should work no problem if they're editor side scripts. Um, if it's a custom script that needs to be uploaded attached to an item and needs to work once uploaded, that's something that has to be whitelisted by us. We have to review that and say, yes, we're okay with this script being run on our system, and then we whitelist it on our processing servers and in our viewer and allow that to work. So there's a lot of stuff that we've already done that with. A lot of the big popular ones, as Gabby says, like fog volumes. If you want to do fog, we pretty much recommend you just go to the asset store and get fog volume 3. That's a great one. Gaia should work. Aquas should work, which is really popular. Water and river setup. There's a lot of assets that we've already reviewed and whitelisted as core assets. But if there's something that you specifically want to use that isn't currently whitelisted, um, when you upload, it's just going to strip those off. So if you want those to be able to work, you're going to have to contact us and say, hey, I want this to work. Actually, shaders are a different issue. Shaders should just work. Shaders shouldn't need to be whitelisted. You should be able to upload those. If you're uploading them and they're not working, it may be a compatibility issue between what version of Unity shader was designed for and the one that we're currently running, or the viewer that you're running, or there may be some other issue. We have had some um, regression issues with going from 1B to 2B. Stuff looks different on Unity 2018 than it does on 2017, or and things like that. So that's one of the things we're fixing. Is a lot we have to uh, build bridges between those two for a lot of older content, and there's a lot of stuff on the asset store that goes back to like, oh yes, this was designed for Unity 5, and it's just way out there. And then of course you have the flip side. You also have stuff on there. It's like this is designed for Unity 2019, which even Unity doesn't consider stable yet. So that won't work in Sciencebase just because it's designed for a newer version, and it's designed for an older version that may need patching or updating to get to work on 2017 or 20. So we're not specifically limiting shaders, but there's a lot of reasons why those shaders may or may not work, depending on what version they were designed for and what version you're trying to run them on. If you have a specific example of a shader that you're trying to get working and it's not working, contact one of us, the community, or on Discord or something, and we can look at it. It's particularly helpful if you've put it on something and uploaded that item already, and you're like, okay, I put it on here, it works in the editor, I uploaded it, it doesn't work on Sciencebase, send us the virtual good ID for that item that you've uploaded, and that's makes it much easier for us to go, okay, there's already an item that's supposed to be using it. We can just pull it out of the curator and look at it directly on the staging server, and see what's going on the live version. Let's see. Building a cathedral called the Our Lady of Perpetual Beta. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but we're also where we talked about this a little bit last week as well. We did have an end of beta plan, um, before COVID happened, and then all plans went out the window, and we started over with new plans and new priorities because everyone did, because everything changes. Everything changed, starting in, really it started in February, but really especially mid-February, things is. We do have a new end of beta plan. Um, Again, that's going to depend on what happens over the next, few months. We'll see what happens there, because there's circumstances obviously outside of our control. A lot of things happen nobody expected to happen globally. So, we do have an end of beta plan, but I totally understand and appreciate, yeah, the idea behind Our Lady of Perpetual Beta. I mean, I'd go to that church. Yeah, we've got about 15 minutes here, left on the hour. I do have a meeting after this, so I am going to have to do a hard cut today at the end of the hour. So if anybody's got questions, feel free to throw them at me. Again, if I miss them, throw them at me again. I think I've gotten through most of my list here that I was going to mention. Um, just like I said, it's been a little bit of a slower development week for us, just because a lot of our and art team were on vacation in Shanghai because it's a national holiday over there in China, and but the work that has been being done by people who aren't on vacation has mostly been behind the scenes stuff. So we're fixing bugs, we're fixing content regression, we're improving our build architecture, that kind of stuff. Estimate for 2B to go to production. Well, that's that's something I'm hesitant to give you a time and then have you hold me to it next week. But um, that is like we're at a point right now where we're asking ourselves that question like twice a week. Um, you know, is this ready? Can we push it now? What are the blocking issues? What do we absolutely have to fix right now? And then we do another review days later, and we're saying, what have we fixed? What have we got left? Can we push this? Can we push this one to beta? Or can we push this one to live? And we'll be asking that question about 2B45 tomorrow. We'll be looking at the results of 2B45 and saying, does 2B45 our our threshold? Um, and it's kind of like launching a rocket. You get the rocket up to the pad, and you say, okay, are we go or no go? We need a go no go from everybody who's working on it, and our QA team. And if we get a no go from one of those, we have to say, okay, take the rocket off the launch pad. We have to fix something, but then try and launch again next. But yeah, we all really, 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 really want that to go to the live servers as soon as possible. I think I mentioned the last couple of weeks is that not being live actually um, is a huge time sink for us. And if we can get that live, then it actually frees up a lot of our time to work on finishing those new features, not just bug fixing and architecture and that. So believe me when I say like everybody here, everybody on the team, like every day we're like, can we go live with this? Can we go live with this? Like that we really, really want that to go live. And I hesitate to say this, but I think we're very close now. Some major show-stopping bugs fixed, things like avatars not appearing, some content regression issues, a couple little shader issues we're still looking at, that before we say, okay, yeah, everything works, you know, um, content-wise, everything is at least as good in 2B as it is in 1B, if not better. We just don't want broken content, and some fundamental things have to work, and that list is getting checked off. There's not much on that list. Yeah, your lashes are one of the things. Yeah, and uh, unfortunately, you are Gabby. You are a victim of the Shanghai office being on vacation. That's where a lot of our art team is, and that's where the developers and the members looking at your lashes are, was in the Shanghai office, and they've been on vacation since last Wednesday, but they're back now. So I will press them on that today and tomorrow, and see if we can get an answer on that. Um, and if we can knock that one out, that's like one of the last items on the list that we're like, okay, this content should work. It doesn't. Part of the problem is also is I think you're the first person who's even tried to make new custom lashes with that system. We made some, and and everybody used ours, but as far as making a custom lash shape versus just having custom lash textures, I think you might be the first person trying that. So that's a little bit of yeah, and that's great. Yeah, and absolutely. Um, Unfortunately, this is the result of being on the bleeding edge. But yeah, I've been watching your content on Facebook and stuff, and it's looking amazing. And we absolutely want to help you get that out as soon as we can. Like I said, it's just the people working on that have been on vacation for the last week, but hopefully now that they're back, we can knock that out very quickly. Like I said, they actually just came back last night for me because they're getting up when I'm going to bed because they're literally on the other side of the world. So they worked last night while I was sleeping. So I'll poke them again today when they get into the office, and we'll see where we are on those. Adding that to my list as well here. Yeah, keep creating, keep pushing. That's absolutely what we want. And keep bugging us about it if something doesn't work. Like I said, I know it's frustrating. You're like, I bug you and I bug you and I bug you, and this is still fixed. This still isn't fixed. And like I mentioned before, unfortunately, that's a matter of like, well, ignoring the vacation thing. It's a matter of, okay, yeah, we know this has been broken for a while, but there's higher priority stuff that has to be fixed, and that's frustrating. Um, but we're not ignoring you. We acknowledge the problem. If you bring a problem to us, we're like, yep, see that, it's on the list. Um, it's just very hard to give a definitive fix date because even if the days where I sit down and get to do what I actually planned to do for that day are very few and far between, because I'll get up in the morning and there's like something totally new I didn't know about the previous day, and it's like, okay, well, that's unfortunately a higher priority now and has to be addressed. So that's what I end up doing that day instead of what I planned to do. But not we're not going to take it personally if you keep bringing up the same issue over and over again. You're like, hey, this still doesn't work. This still doesn't work. We're like, our answer may be, we know we're getting to it. It's just not the highest priority right now. But bring it up, especially if it's an issue for you. Keep surfacing that issue, and it will get addressed. It's just a matter of, okay, five things before that I have to get addressed first. We've got about 8 or 10 minutes left here, so if anybody's got questions, don't hold back. Unibrow could be a winner. Yeah, hey, you never know. Some people really rock a unibrow. do I consider the Tech Hour event series a success, and will you continue? Um, yeah, I think so. I have no plans to stop. I plan to keep doing this every Wednesday. Adam drops in when he can. We're all very busy, but Adam tends to be assigned the highest of high priority work because he's the he's not just he built ScienceSpace. He's one of the original founders and developers. He's our chief product officer. He knows the platform better than anybody. He knows the workings of Unity probably better than anybody, and probably anybody period. So oftentimes he gets the really difficult issue on his desk, and the difficult issues tend to be also the highest priority issues. So it's a lot harder for him to shake free than it is for me to shake free. So I appreciate you guys coming to these things, even though I'm not Adam. Hopefully, I'm still providing useful information and useful answers to people here. So as long as that continues to be useful, I will continue to do it. Not a big deal for me to shake free an hour a week and talk to you guys, and we really appreciate the dialogue that goes back and forth here.
Josh, there's a time zone question there that's come up a couple of times from Futurist.
Automatic time zone conversions to show times in users' local time. Um, yeah, that would be useful to have, I suppose. Do they all show in universal time currently? Is that what we're doing on like the events calendar?
The events calendar actually shows the time as your time,
Yeah,
not
that one's already
server time.
localized. Yeah, so
Yeah.
what times need to be localized? I guess the clock at the top shows universal time because it's showing as 4 hours ahead of me. So I guess that yeah, it's showing UTC. Yeah, that would be nice to if we could get a setting to show that top clock in your local time zone. That being said, there's a lot of merit to having a clock that everybody abides by. Um, if we could show both, that would be great. But for coordinating events, it's often useful to say, so the event's going to be at 5 o'clock ScienceSpace time, and everybody knows what time that is because everybody has the same clock. And when it rolls around to 5 o'clock, everybody's like, oh, it's 5 o'clock for everybody in ScienceSpace. And so there is merit to having that sort of clock, unified clock system, no matter where you are. But if I think it would be great if we could show both, or at least give you the option of which. Yeah, it shows local time but cannot teleport. I actually talked about that at the beginning of the hour. The reason that those teleports sometimes don't work, they do work for some of them. Like if an event's in the Welcome Center or Club 381 or something like that, those work. Events coming here for the assembly have historically not worked. And the reason I mentioned at the beginning of the show is because it turns out those only work for featured regions. If the event is not taking place in a featured region, that button doesn't work. We're gonna fix that. I was actually just looking at that before the show this morning, so we'll come up with a plan to fix that so those buttons always work if there's an event at a region. But yeah, that one's already being planned. And I'll add the time zone to my list, and I'll bring it up with the dev team and see where it makes sense to have a local clock versus a universal clock, and whether we want to give you the option of both or either or whatever. Like I said, again, that can cause problems as it does in the real world, where you say, "Oh yeah, we're having an event at 5 o'clock Eastern time," and everybody's like, "Now, what is that in my time zone? What is that in Australia? What is that in England? What is that in West Coast?" Time zones are a major pain here, and so to some extent, having a universal clock in ScienceSpace helps mitigate that. But um, it would be useful if at least there was something on there where it said, you know, for me, it currently shows almost 5 o'clock UTC when it's almost 1 o'clock Eastern time. So if it just said, 5 o'clock UTC, you know, +4, so that I knew that that was 4 hours ahead of me. Something even as simple as just having the hour difference on there might be super. Um, building in world. My Paul is calling my attention to a question about building in world here from Brasana. Um, Depends on what you mean by building in world. If you mean actually creating new meshes in world, that's not a high priority right now. It is something that's on our roadmap for after 2B goes live. We've got a number of in-world building systems that we want to enable, and they allow you to create meshes in different ways. And some people may prefer one or over the other, or one may be more useful in certain contexts, like making organic stuff versus making architectural type stuff. Um, but we're going to pick one to start with and go with it. But that's going to be a priority only after 2B goes to production. Yeah, I know a lot of people want in-world building. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen behind the scenes to make that possible, because it's not just interface for doing the building, but there's stuff like we have to package that up and store it on the server as a new asset. We basically have to build a new virtual good out of it and add it to your account. Then there's questions arise from things like that's bypassing the review process. So what do we do? How do we handle content that's made in world that doesn't go through our normal review channels? We would have to somehow restrict the way that content gets used until it gets approved by the review panel. It's just a whole completely different creation path. Um, yeah, well, yeah, probably. I mean, to some extent, the review process is in place, for a good reason. It prevents pirated content, it prevents intellectual property infringing content, it prevents malicious content, um, and those kind of things would be concerns for stuff that was built directly through the viewer as well. So we need to have a serious um, understanding and plan for how we review and handle content that is created entirely through the viewer online live there, because it is bypassing our normal channels, and that's something we have to be um, very seriously concerned. Um, yeah, I understand that the creation path here does feel like it's open Unity. You make something, you set it up as a virtual good, you upload it, has to be reviewed. That might take a while. If something is wrong with the review process, you may have to redo it. Just putting it on the servers, the processing servers can take a while to actually process the item if there's a big queue going on. So I understand that the um, the creation process here is slower than it is other places. That's one of the things that we want to address with in-world building, and also just because it gives an option for people who don't want to use the full Unity editor. We would like to speed that up. We're looking at ways to speed up our processing architecture and some other things as well. Um, but that review process, um, there are ways around it if you can convince us. We can assign, we can give a particular person trusted status that lets them bypass the review status, the review process, if we trust them, if we have an arrangement with them. If we have a way to if we have an actual setup with them, we can enable that for specific users, and maybe that makes sense for some people. That's something we can discuss if you feel like that's something you need on your account and there's a good reason for it. Yeah, some people are just finding out about this. But yeah, if you feel like there's a reason you should have that status, then contact us and we can review your account and review that with you, and decide if that makes sense for your account to be able to bypass that review process. Um, but no promises. I'm not just handing out passes to everybody. But if you want your account reviewed for that purpose, we can review it, and discuss that. But fundamentally, we are always going to have some kind of review process, and so our creation path is always probably going to be a little bit slower than places where anything goes and there's no rules and there's no IP content protection, there's no protection against piracy, there's no protection against malicious content. We specifically want those things, which means we have to have a review process, and that's probably not going to go away for most people ever. Like I said, again, on a count by count basis, we can grant you some extra privileges if that seems warranted for your account. But then there's penalties if you break those rules. The process is meant to prevent in the first place. We would like to expand the number of team people we have on the review team. Absolutely. It's just a resources thing. It's like, what are those people doing? They're not necessarily just doing reviewing. If we're hiring a dedicated team of reviewers, then it has to make sense that that there's a real benefit to your item being reviewed in a few hours instead of 12 hours or whatever. So I've got to, like I said, I've got another meeting I have to come up to. So I'm sorry if I can't get any more questions after this, but I do have to make a hard cutoff here, as I have another meeting that I have to get to that I can't blow off, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to blow off meetings. But yeah, we'll be doing this again next week. If you've got questions that didn't get answered, feel free to throw it at me on Discord, or throw it at one of the other community members, or save it for next week and we'll go over it again. But I do have to run for this week, so I appreciate everyone showing up here, and we'll see everyone later.
I did see the sent email question there. We'll throw that at Josh next week.
Okay, great. Yeah, any questions I missed, I'm sorry. Feel free to save them, and we'll address them again next week or in between. But I'm signing out for now. So take care, everyone.